It took 5 years working at Alex Hormozi's gym launch and becoming Iman Gadzhi's top cash collected closer to learn what I'm about to teach you in the next 10 minutes. It is not what you say on sales calls that determines if you close a deal, it is how you say it. You see, when I first got into sales, I was expected to memorize the sales script verbatim. I mean, I studied every single objection response, and I could practically recite closing techniques in my sleep. But I still struggled to close at above 25%. But here's the thing, we had a few closers on the team that were closing at 60, 70%, and they were saying the exact same words as me. That's when I realized the top performers weren't saying different words than everyone else. They were saying the same words, but differently. And as a result, they were able to ask the same exact questions as me, but their questions hit a lot deeper. They triggered emotion, and they triggered the prospect to take action and purchase on the call. Understanding how to better use my tone and tonality on sales calls was a game changer that helped me double my close rate. So that's what this video is about. I am going to show you exactly how your voice, not just your words, controls every single sales interaction. And I'll give you the specific tonality techniques that helped me close over $10 million in high ticket sales the past 5 years. So grab a pen and paper or your cell phone, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why tonality is the secret weapon that separates elite closers from everyone else. Now, let me start with something that completely blew my mind when I first realized it. You could say the exact same sentence or ask the exact same question and trigger a different response depending on how you ask it. So here's an example. And funny enough, I got a piece of this from an Alex Hormozi video, but I am going to add on a lot more context that he didn't on why tonality is so important. Let's go back to the days that you were a child, sitting in your bedroom, minding your own business, and your parent or your mother screamed your name. Depending on how your mother screamed your name, it would trigger a different response and a different emotion in yourself as a child. And this could go from any example. Maybe you have an angry girlfriend or angry significant other. But in my case, it used to go a little something like this. I used to be sitting in my room, minding my own business, and my mom would scream, "Alex," or "Alex," or even "Alex." Now in this example, I said the exact same thing in 3 different ways. Not only did each version of saying my name mean something different, but it also triggered a different response out of me. I'm sure you could imagine saying something like "Alex" versus "Alex" would invoke a different emotion out of me and a different response as a child. On the first example, it was said in more of a curious tone. In the second example, I knew damn well I was in trouble. Now let's give a more direct sales example. This is one of the most common questions that I get from sales teams that I manage, or even salespeople in my group. And usually what they say is, "Hey Alex, I don't like asking consequence questions because it feels cheesy, it feels corny, and I never get the response that I want out of prospects." And if you don't know what a consequence question is, typically it goes something around, what happens if nothing changes? Now here is the key insight that I always share with them. Your question is not hitting hard because of where you place it and how you say it. And what I mean by that, this could be a whole other training, but number 1 is you want to earn the right to ask certain questions, meaning you need to place the question in the right area of the sales call. Similar to how if you meet somebody cold and you ask them to go on a date with you within the first 60 seconds, you're gonna get a very odd response. Versus if you spend 6 or 7 minutes building rapport, asking them where they're from, and then ask to go on a date, you have a much higher chance of getting the response that you want. Now, second, and most importantly, is I usually tell salespeople that you're not getting the response that you want because of how you're asking it. So in this consequence question example, let's imagine I'm speaking with a prospect. Maybe it's a B2B sales call. It's a company that's doing, let's say, $50,000 a month. They want to get to $200,000 per month, and the thing that's holding them back is finding a better marketing solution for them. AKA, they need a way to get new leads, and that is why they're on the call with me, because they want our company to provide marketing solutions. Now, there's 2 ways that I could ask this question. I could be very blunt and straightforward and say, "Hey, Mr. Prospect, by the way, like, what happens if nothing changes?" On one hand, the typical response that you'll get from that is probably, "I guess I keep making 50K per month and I have to find a different solution, which is why I'm here." Obviously, that is not the response that you want. When you ask a consequence questions, you want the prospect to take a second to think about their situation and give a heartfelt response that they need to take action or they need to make a change. And so the way that I would ask the question would be completely different. I'm saying the same thing, but with a different tone. And because I'm using a different tone, I'm going to trigger a different response. Now, how would I say it? For something like a consequence question, we need it to hit deep. And so I may take a second and let the conversation sit in silence for a few seconds. Then follow up with, listen, Mr. Prospect, you've been trying multiple different ways to market your business over the past 6 months and nothing has changed. If you don't mind me asking, what happens if we go another 6 months without figuring out this marketing problem? I said the exact same thing, but in a different way. And because of that, I am going to get a very different response. With slowing down my pace and starting to whisper my voice, it automatically signals to your prospect that this is an important thing that you're asking. And because I have good pacing and take a second before I ask the question, it's going to make them think long and hard about their answer before they give it. And this is what I learned from watching the best closers at Gym Launch and Iman's team. They weren't just asking questions. They were strategically directing the conversation and getting the answers they wanted every single time through their tonality. So how do you practice tonality? It comes down to studying and understanding 3 core elements that will help you perfect your tonality on sales calls. Now, the first element is emphasis and inflection. And this is just about which words you stress in a sentence and how do you stress them. When I'm in discovery and I want to understand a timeline, I may ask, how long have you been dealing with this problem? But if I want to understand the severity of the situation, I may ask, how long have you been dealing with this problem? The emphasis on certain words in your sentence will subconsciously tell your prospect the type of answer that you're looking for, and they will respond accordingly. Now, the second element is pacing and pauses. This is about when you speed up, slow down, or pause completely. When you slow down on important concepts, people pay more attention. And when you speed up, you're essentially telling them that this part is not that important. So if I am presenting a solution, I may say, this program includes daily coaching calls, an accountability solution, and a proven framework that has helped 500 clients achieve results in the next 90 days. I will speed through the features, then slow down on the proof and timeline, because that's what actually matters for their decision. By the way, I do have a video that breaks down the exact way and the exact framework that I use to pitch any product or service that I'll tag below in the description. Now, to get back to it, the third element is vocal texture and energy. I noticed this during my time on Iman's team. When prospects were on the fence, the closers who were able to match their energy and then gradually elevate it were the ones who got the yes. For example, if I have somebody who is breaking down, their current problem and the current state of their business and how they're unprofitable and been losing money every single month, I'm gonna come down to their level and use a more curious, empathetic tone. Something along the terms of like, wow, that's horrible, I apologize. How long have you been experiencing this problem? This is gonna get the prospect to trust me and give me a thought-felt answer on the problems they're experiencing with their business. Now, here is where this gets really powerful. Once you understand these 3 elements, you could start creating predictable response patterns. And here's how this actually works. Your brain will process emphasis and pacing as signals of what's important. When you emphasize certain words, you're literally directing someone's attention to what is important. The prospect's subconscious will pick up on what you emphasized and then structure the response based off what's important. An example, how long have you been experiencing this problem? Versus, how long have you been experiencing this problem? Number 2, when you pause before and after certain words, you literally force the prospect's brain to slow down and actually process the concept instead of just hearing it and move on. Now, number 3 is when you speak confidently about the solution you could provide, their subconscious reads that as competence. Then when you slow down before questions, you're signaling, pay attention to this part. The fascinating part is that, the prospect doesn't even realize you're doing this in heat of conversation. This happens all below their subconscious. And when you combine all 3 elements strategically, you're essentially programming the conversation and programming the responses that you want out of the prospect. The emphasis tells them what category to think in, and your delivery speed controls how important this piece of the conversation is. And this is why elite closers effortlessly guide the conversation. They're not working harder, they're just being more intentional with how they communicate. When you use these patterns consistently, you will know what response you get before they even answer your question. But here is something critical that most sales training misses. Your natural personality also affects how you use tonality. During my time working with different teams, I noticed what worked for one closer didn't always work for the other. And as you're watching this, you could probably see how I'm shifting my tonality based off what I say. But all that to say, listen, it wasn't always about skill set and tonality. One of the most important things is personality alignment. Your baseline personality either needs to be amplified or softened to hit that sweet spot of persuasion. Meaning, if you are naturally intense or straightforward, adding more intensity is just gonna make you sound pushy and aggressive. Instead, you need to use a softer tonality to balance out your natural directiveness. This will create authority without intimidation. The goal is to dial down your natural intensity so prospects feel guided, not pressured. Now, if you're naturally soft-spoken or passive, using additional gentle tonality makes you sound uncertain or lacking confidence. An example is my case. I would consider myself more of a laid-back, passive closer. And I noticed at first that was starting to hurt me with sales. And I needed to raise my energy levels a little bit and be a bit more direct. That way my prospects didn't perceive me as being passive or lacking confidence in the product that I was selling. Here's a simple test that you could use to test which category you're in. If somebody cuts in front of you in line, do you say something? If yes, you are probably naturally more direct and need to soften your approach. If no, you are probably naturally more gentle and you need to add more definitiveness. The key here is that effective tonality is not a one-size-fits-all thing, and you need to understand your starting point and adjust accordingly to land that persuasive middle ground. Now, here is what I want you to understand. Mastering tonality is not about becoming a different person on sales calls. It's about becoming a more intentional version of yourself. When I learned these techniques during my time with Alex Hormozi and Iman Gadzhi, it wasn't just my close rate that improved, it was my relationship with sales. Instead of just hoping that prospects understood what I meant, I could ensure that they understood exactly what I meant. But tonality is just one part of sales, and without understanding the rest, this video will probably be useless to you, which is why I created a literal 4-hour sales masterclass where I share everything from how to land a 6-figure remote sales role with no experience, all the way to becoming an elite closer that consistently clears $30,000 per month in commission. It should pop up somewhere on the screen, and as always, once you learn to sell, you will never starve.